Welcome to the Maverick Mindset, the podcast that was born out of a thirst for personal growth and a curiosity to explore all the traits of a true maverick. If that sounds like something you'd be interested in, join me and let's decode the inner maverick together. I'm your host, Rick Lowe, founder of Brands In, and this year I started the podcast because I was always fascinated by the diverse stories of mavericks that I get to meet in my day-to-day life. So much so that I wanted to share the wisdom with you. My guest today is Amy Hopper, CEO of TOA. Amy founded a digital agency at 25, got hit by a car at 26, grew her agency to a top 30 UK Google partner whilst being wheelchair bound, sold her agency, rebuilt her body, hiked 600 kilometres solo around Europe, took to the speaking circuit, founded a mental health consultancy group, became a sports fitness model, and now consults in well-being, marketing and performance. Now that's a lot to accomplish at such a young age. In this podcast, Amy shares a unique story in how she overcame immense challenges to march on to success on her own terms. We cover how she maintains a mindset, her outlook on the roller coaster ride of life and business, her lessons learned, and how she has triumphed over adversity, and much, much more. Cheers, Amy.
Cheers.
Thanks for joining me on the first Maverick Mindsets podcast.
It's a pleasure. It's like carpool karaoke.
Yeah, it was a bit innovative. In actual fact, we've just been, to the listeners here, we've just been talking for the past hour and a half coming out of London, and actually we should have recorded it, but that means there's going to be at least 2 or 3 more in the future.
Absolutely.
We don't want to give you everything today,
there was actually really good stuff in there we should have recorded. I'll try and remember what I said that was poignant.
But it's a real pleasure having you on, because I know you reasonably well. We always have very interesting conversations, and the whole Maverick philosophy, I think, is about different people, how they approach things differently and how they kind of view life, success, challenges. And I thought it'd be great to start you on the series because you've had a tumultuous existence in your young years, right?
Character building,
as we were saying.
That's what they say, yeah.
And I thought, you know, to kind of kick off, talk a little bit about you and your life, and then we can dig into work, business, and kind of entrepreneurship, that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely.
And I've got a couple of secret questions at the end, which
you haven't
if you look
told
at my
me
crib
about.
sheet, you may be able to see.
Okay.
But look, having read your bio, fascinating, obviously. For those who don't know Amy, if you just do some Google search and look in the liner notes, you will definitely be able to pick up on why she's had such a challenging set of circumstances that she's overcome. And it's just, I think for the listeners, it's just share with us kind of that journey, top line, on what you've been through.
Oh, God. Okay, so
in 2 sentences.
2 sentences, yeah. Well, started my first business at 25, high-speed car collision at 26, hit by someone else, went through a brick wall, left wheelchair-bound, permanent spine damage, having to run the business for 5 years with chronic pain, undergoing several spine operations every year, getting that business up to the level where we were top 30 Google partner out of 30,000 agencies, won an Amazon Business Award, won loads of other awards. The business was doing really, really beautifully, but being in a position of then having to have a full spinal fusion at the age of 31. So I'm part titanium. That's why people call me the digital Wolverine, which I really quite like, to be honest. Also within that, my hair fell out, hence the hairstyle now. Donated my hair to a charity called the Little Princess Trust, who make wigs for children with cancer, and who I'm now an ambassador for. But then very, very sadly, of course, in the beginning of lockdown, May 2020, my business partner and husband took his own life. So being in a position of, okay, so we're in a pandemic, I'm wheelchair bound, having just had a spinal fusion, trying to rebuild my body. I've now widowed, and still have this business, thinking, what am I going to do?
Sure.
And literally losing everything, including your health, your business, your wealth, your husband, your partner, your best friend. It all in one go was really, really quite something.
Almost like everything coming at once.
Yeah.
Overwhelmed.
They say it comes in 3s, not in 12s.
Yeah.
And being in that position of just, I suppose, true surrender, realizing what's important, and investing back in myself to get back on track.
Sure. And I guess, in order to overcome those immense challenges, I mean, a lot of what I kind of look at with the Maverick mindset is how people think and deal with and grow through those challenges. And that must have been a series of steps or quantum leaps you had to go through.
Yeah, it was huge amounts of therapy.
Yeah,
you can't do something like that alone.
No,
you have sort of support around you. But for me, a lot of people kept on saying, like, "How did you do it? How did you do that? How did you come through it?" And there's almost the British thing or the humbling thing of saying, "Oh, you just get up every day and you take a step." But realizing that wasn't the case, and I'd been through every single self-help book in the library. I'd done the yoga ashrams and the supplements and the exercises and pretty much everything that you could possibly think of in terms of self-development and growth, as they say, and realized that I'd created a system. And I'd created a system that was built on what worked within business, what worked for me as an entrepreneur, and as a person going through these huge amounts of challenges, but still wanting to achieve goals and still wanting to push forward. And then that's what TOA Group is founded on. That's what the workshops are founded on. I took my wounds, turned them into wisdom, but I want to give that wisdom to other people without having to go through the...
And that workshop you did on TOA, I found very illuminating, actually. So it's incredibly valuable to approach kind of the corporate mindset from that point of view.
Absolutely. Because that's the thing, isn't it? Is that you can approach it from a therapy point of view. You can approach it from a sort of mind-body point of view and tell everyone to go and do yoga, but actually combining all of them, and that's actually going to work within business, within corporates, within high-performing teams. That's the goal.
And in those experiences, how do you think they've changed your perceptions on life?
Oh gosh, what a question! Hugely. Absolutely hugely.
Well, like living in the present or being appreciative. I mean, it might sound cliche in my life, but being appreciative of the simple things. I mean, you must have really given some deep thought, because the stop button was pressed on your life, wasn't it, basically? And 100%. You had to reset everything.
I think we said this earlier. I can remember after the car crash being in a position of like lying on the cold hard ground and genuinely thinking, I'm going to die. I'm 26 years old and I'm going to die right now. And in that moment, you don't think about, oh, I'm so glad I got that bonus last year. I'm so glad I got that reporting because I worked late. Or you think about your friends and your family, and you think about the time you spent with them and how you want more of it. And that's it. So being in that, and I'd say I'm very fortunate to have had that experience, because it has taken the point where you really, really do realise what's important when it comes down to it. When you think your life is over, and you are able to come back to that moment at times when I might be pushing too hard or getting towards a burnout, or perhaps chasing money or and thinking, no, let's remember that moment and what's actually truly valuable.
And how do you kind of manage your mindset now? How do you good days, bad days, like we all have. Life is a roller coaster, and it's a conveyor belt in many ways. But how do you what tools, what kind of drills, what kind of habits do you form to keep yourself in the right frame of mind, or to bring you back online?
That's a really good question. Structure is really important to me, because I'm slightly neurodivergent, so I like to have a nice amount of structure, a set morning routine.
Very difficult being an entrepreneur.
Very difficult. But having those set morning routines. So even something simple, I wake up and I make my bed. That's the first thing I have to do.
Yeah.
I don't sort of believe in the you have to get up at 4 a.m. and do this and that. And I try and have a cold shower. If I'm not feeling it, I don't get to the gym, move my body in some way, have hot water and lemon, and then that's my set structure for the morning.
Yeah.
Working with how I feel in that moment, in that day, and self-awareness, and practicing a lot of kindness is really, really important. Trying not to spend too much time on social media. I don't really watch the news, and try not to compare myself to others.
Yeah.
And that's probably the key things I'd say.
Yeah.
And in terms of bad days, I'd like to think of bad hours.
Yeah.
So have you actually had a bad day, or have you just had a bad hour? And in that moment, okay, I've got lots of things that I can't do that might be affecting me or affecting my well-being. Let's focus on what I can do.
Yeah.
And let's just move that, pivot that.
So it is really that shift of focus on moving towards what you want and away from what you don't want.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that is it's a muscle that needs exercising and managing.
Yeah,
right?
100%. I think if we are responsible for the narrative that we create in our lives. So if I have the narrative of, say for example, when I had the fusion and I was in a wheelchair, could barely walk of more than a few meters, and this is talking from someone that used to competitively sprint.
Yeah.
That was big moment, and thinking, okay, well, if I thought, oh, I can't, I'm never going to run again, I'm never going to do this, I'm never going to do that. If I kept on feeding myself that narrative, it's going to take me further and further down into just a hole of negativity.
Sure.
So I thought, okay, well, what can I do? I know that someday I'm going to be able to hike, and that's something I can do. So in that moment, okay, well, I can walk to the end of my parents' drive and back, and the next day maybe I can walk to that lamppost over there and back, and every day thinking, okay, what can I do today? What, although small or incremental, what can I do? Because you look back after a year, 2 years, and realize that you've run a marathon. Yeah.
And we were talking earlier before we were on record about that kind, I don't know what term you use, goal, how you break those kind of goals down.
Yes, I do. Incremental goal setting.
Yeah.
Just breaking it down until you get to a point where it's actually manageable for you and your mental health in that moment.
Yeah, because obviously the society we live in now, we want things instantly, and that is part of the discipline or understanding of going after anything in life that's worthwhile, because it does take time, right? And it's sometimes one step back to go two forward.
Yeah, exactly. I think the biggest thing, one of the biggest lessons I've learned over the last few years is patience. I was not a patient person at all. I mean, I worked in digital, wanted it now. This has to be done yesterday. We are often like that as business owners, aren't we?
Yeah, of course.
CEOs. And particularly, as you say, in this modern world of social media and digital and AI and everything in between, we are expected to have things instantly. And to take that step back and think, I've got to be kind to myself, and I've got to think of this as a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year plan. That was hard. Yeah. But I thought, okay, well, if I don't do that, I'm going to fail. Yeah. I can either do this slowly, or if I try and do it all in one go, I'm going to fail and fall on my face and get nowhere.
And did you reward yourself for those incremental steps? Do you think, wow, I mean, that's a huge step getting down to the bottom of the garden path, for example. It might seem tiny from previously, but then in that, it's huge.
I had an amazing lesson from my dear uncle, and he was in the Paddington train crash.
Right.
And he was one of the survivors, and I spoke to him quite a lot we had a lot of shared conversations about trauma and how we cope with it. And he still has to get on the train to go for work and for business meetings. Yeah. And he said to me, even now, when he gets on the train, he gets himself a coffee and he gets himself a newspaper. And that's his little reward. I've got on a train. So I thought, oh, okay, I'll do that. So after the car crash, every time I got in the car, I'd maybe go and get myself a coffee at a service station. And that was my little treat for me. And you really do have to reward yourself for those moments. Yeah. And thank yourself for getting through them. It makes a massive difference.
Yeah, sure. Sure. And I mean, in terms of general stuff, I mean, what are some of the biggest challenges facing us as individuals now? Because we've got there's a lot in the media now about mental health issues, anxiety, burnout, the negative impacts, and we were talking earlier about social media. So the world's a very different place than 10 years ago.
Yes.
And what do you see as some of those challenges, and maybe how to kind of look at them or unpick them or look at them in a different way?
I think in my line of work now and what we've been seeing with TOA Group is particularly coming out of COVID and the mix of hybrid working, people working at home, there is definitely this idea of segregation and my lane, and that's not getting involved with others. We've lost a sense of empathy, and we've lost this sort of sense of collective well-being, and very much thinking on sort of individual terms. And a lot of the companies I'm working with want to bring that back in. They want people to be able to see the person behind an email.
Yes, yeah.
And that's something that we seem to have lost.
Yeah,
we're losing it anyway, but particularly since COVID. So for me, teaching people tools regarding empathy, regarding their own self-awareness, their own emotional regulation, even as something simple as what lifts you, what drains you, how can you apply that to your daily life?
Sure.
Those are some of the key elements, I would say.
Yeah.
People being able to think about their own thinking and know when they are not doing okay before it gets to a point where it's actually having a serious impact on that person, their mental health, and requiring further intervention.
Sure. Interesting. And I guess, we touched on TOA then, so kind of shifting gears into the kind of your business world and entrepreneurship. How did TOA come about?
So TOA came about just purely because of having gone through all of what I went through, and realizing that there is a serious need for mental health infrastructure and wellbeing consultation within larger corporations and high performance teams.
Yeah.
And particularly with directors, C-suite, they have also have an individual set of, I suppose, challenges, and can often feel quite lonely. And TOA came from
Certainly.
We both know that, right? So TOA came from seeing this need for wellbeing help within companies, as we've seen higher turnover rates of staff, issues with burnout, mental health issues, people being off sick more often, anxieties not going into the office, a huge rise of impostor syndrome. And it came from a need to help people with, and help teams and companies with those issues.
And talk a bit about imposter syndrome. That's when you, in my simple terms, you achieve something and you don't think you deserve it. Is that basically it?
The imposter syndrome is there is a disparity between how good you are and how good you think you are. So if you think a bit of a graph of, normally the more experience we get, the more we're educated, the more qualifications, the more that we achieve in our roles, how good we think we are at our job kind of raises exponentially. You think, oh yeah, as I get better at my job, I'm going to think I'm better at my job, logically. With imposter syndrome, we could be absolutely fantastic at our jobs, very qualified, very, very capable, and still think that we are horrific at it. Or we still have those days you think, oh, I'm not good enough. And that for me is the underlying phrase that comes with imposter syndrome. I'm not good enough. And it's something that we all tend to suffer with at some point in our careers. Women hugely suffer with this. Even some studies have suggested that over 75% of women suffer with or have suffered with imposter syndrome at some point. And it's a big issue that can affect how someone performs and how they feel about themselves, therefore their well-being, and eventually their mental health.
And is there a way of kind of overcoming it or dealing with it in fairly simple ways, methods?
Oh, absolutely. For me, it is this sense of realizing that everyone feels the same. So we would get
So
everyone.
everyone's insecure.
Yeah,
Everyone's fighting a battle we know nothing about.
Well, everyone is fighting a battle. Yes, everyone is going through their own things. And while we might be there thinking, oh my gosh, everyone thinks I'm a failure. What if I get figured out? I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
The person sat next to you is probably thinking
absolutely.
along the same lines.
Yeah.
So when we're doing workshops, one of the main things, we just get people to talk and actually have that open forum where everyone can be heard and seen and realise that actually we're all very, very similar. And we all think along the same lines, and we're all having those insecurities. Not everyone thinks the same way though. There is the opposite of Dunning-Kruger, called Dunning-Kruger, and that's where you think we've all met those people where you're actually terrible at your job, what you think you're wonderful.
Yeah. There's lots of those as well.
Yeah, Dunning-Kruger, or just being an arse.
And your journey is interesting because you were a successful young entrepreneur, and you managed to get an exit and sell that business,
Yes.
which is not easy to do. It's one thing starting a business, it's another thing growing it.
Yes.
And then selling it's a whole different set of dynamics.
Selling it while you're undergoing EMDR trauma therapy is another kettle of fish.
Did you, when you set that business up, did you kind of think this is going to be me? I love this business. Did you always think I'm going to, it's a 2, 3, 10 year plan and I'm going to be out of it?
I think I never considered that it would, my own imposter syndrome. For me, I just had a business that a few people like coming to me for their marketing.
Yeah.
And then it grew, then we won awards, and then it grew, then it won awards, and the imposter syndrome it still comes there at every single level.
Yeah.
So for me, I never thought someone's going to want to buy this one day.
Yeah.
And then when we got a couple of offers come in a few years back, and that's when we started looking at it seriously. But of course, everything else happened.
Yeah.
And COVID as well. It was all up in arms. But yeah, it was never something I thought from the start. I'm going to create a business and I'm going to sell it, and it's going to be wonderful. Accidental entrepreneur, I think I'd describe.
It's opportunity, isn't it?
Yeah.
And be able to strike. And on your journey of running a business and building a business, what are some of those key learnings that, when you think about, I've got this far now, what are some of the things that you would share with others and say that these are the things I've really learned?
Oh, you need to be able to say no. That's the key thing. You need to be able to say no. I think particularly when you start your business, and if you're having the thought that you need to get money in, pay your mortgage, pay your bills, there is this almost desperation to get money in. So you may lower your prices, you may do work that doesn't necessarily fit your goals.
Yeah.
And I was definitely suffered with that I said yes to things I shouldn't have said yes to because they didn't take my business in the way they wanted to go, or I took on clients that I knew weren't quite right, which invariably just actually takes you off your course. I think also people respect you more if you say no, and you need to be able to set those boundaries.
That's right, and it's interesting, isn't it? I think when we start businesses, anyone who wants to buy from us will entertain them, and actually it's beyond the purchase where the value chain either increases or decreases. And I read a really good book once by Brian Tracy, and he said every January he goes through his list of customers and decides which ones he's going to fire.
You should.
Because basically, do you know what? That we've moved on. They're not moving with us. They don't respect us. Whatever it is, but it's almost like you prune the rose bush and
Absolutely.
just say, do you know what? This isn't healthy for us.
That's 100%.
But very brave to say no, isn't it?
Very, very brave. But it's all about that long-term thinking, and I completely agree that you should fire your clients, as I say, because even the sense of sometimes you might have a client that's quite difficult, but then that can create animosity in your team, which then can cause someone in your team to leave. Yeah, and then you've got a whole other different
like collateral damage almost.
Exactly. I think another thing that I learned as well is that you cannot be Superwoman. you need to bring in people that are specialists in their field that deal with that area.
Yeah.
So getting a good accountant on board straight away rather than doing it yourself.
Yeah.
Getting a good PA on board. Like those are some of the key people that are actually going to help your business. You just don't see them as a cost; they're an investment.
Yeah, value.
Huge amount of value that are going to make their money back in what you pay them, and also take away the stress. That means you can then focus your energy on more important things.
Yeah, because normally what we're good at, we enjoy. The reason we enjoy it is because we're good at it, and then all the stuff we don't enjoy, we're bad at it. And I think I always try and think in my life, is business world, is what's the best use of my time, what's my best value I can give, and then therefore what's my greatest skill that I should be doing more of. And in your case, what in business, what would you think your greatest skill is?
That's so hard. I think one thing I'm I suppose most proud of, rather than I don't know if this is a skill, is having gone through everything that I've gone through to still remain kind.
Sure.
And I think that particularly when I started 10 years ago, I had a lot of internal battles between thinking that to be successful in business and to be this entrepreneur, particularly as a woman, that I had to be like this boss bitch, and that you almost couldn't be successful unless you had that attitude, unless I changed my core personality to think, well, I've got to be harder, and I've got to be unfeeling, and I've got to have this sort of "you're fired" type attitude.
Where do you think you got that perception from? Is that just the way, kind of, what lunches for wimps kind of mentality that the media?
Yeah, from the media, from the like shows like The Apprentice.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you're fired.
Just absolute nonsense. And also, I think, obviously, the makeup of women in business was very different when I started, like a decade ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I started my business at a time where it was only 20% female in the digital industry, and
was it as small as that?
Yeah, it's very, very small, and less than 2% of businesses in the digital industry were owned by women. So it was almost like decided that I had to be pushing a lot more and sort of change my persona.
Yeah.
And remaining authentic. I think it is a skill to remain authentic when everything around you is telling you that you should be something else.
Yeah.
And so that's probably the thing that I would say. Yeah.
And do you have any role models or people in business you think, they've really nailed it? I really respect them.
So Melanie Perkins is probably one of the key ones, I would say. So I admire her because, one, she saw a problem. She saw a problem that everyone was using programs like Adobe, having to pay huge amounts of money, or pay designers huge amounts of money every time they wanted to change a graphic, and thought that people should be able to do that for themselves. So she developed Canva. And the reason I admire her is because, one, she was trying to solve a big problem. Two, she was a woman taking on a digital industry that was male dominated. Three, she received so many no's.
Yeah.
When she went through seed funding for Canva, I think she talked to 100 investors.
Who all didn't believe in her.
Yeah, 100 investors that said no. And suddenly there was one that did.
Wow.
And you sort of think, 100 no's is a hell of a lot of no's to just keep on going and going. And that belief in her product, and that belief in what she was trying to do, if you said to someone, oh, you're going to receive 100 no's, but your 101 will be a yes, you'd be so excited to receive that first no.
Yeah, you would. Like, you want to get through it. Let's have more no's.
Yeah, let's get me started. And now she's the third richest woman in Australia.
Wow.
And Canva, I believe, is 3.5 billion it's worth.
Yeah.
And it's the primary design.
And imagine if she'd have stopped at 99.
Imagine if she stopped at 99.
The worst business advice you ever got given?
A friend once told me, why don't you get a proper job now? And I thought, okay. that was not
a dream
really
stealer.
A dream stealer. Trying to think, actually.
It's tough when you reframe it, our business world like that, isn't it? Because sometimes you do get given bad advice that you think, well, they must, they're an expert, maybe self-appointed. I'll just go down that road.
I'm trying to think. I think at the beginning, you know what? Because I don't really focus on that. I can't actually think.
Good
I know
question.
there's been so many, but I can't.
Have you ever taken any advice that's been giving you horrendous result?
Oh, all the time. All the time. It's business. I think. Okay, so here's any piece of advice I've been given that I've thought, okay, that probably wasn't good. It was advice that came along with, you should wait it out. And I know that sometimes we do need to take a step back and we need to reassess and perhaps think about things a little bit more. But when you get that gut feeling and you need to make that move, people that have perhaps been a little bit more tentative in life, and have said, oh no, you should wait here and don't do anything about it and just see how it goes. That's when I feel that things have happened and impacted me or the business negatively, rather than going with my gut.
Sure. It's like your instinct always, isn't it? It generally guides you.
I hadn't trusted my gut. I hadn't trusted my instinct. I'd sought advice from an outside party who perhaps didn't even know the situation, and I'd gone with their advice because I wasn't strong enough in my own conviction.
Interesting.
To go on my own thoughts.
And probably a common thing we've all done.
Yeah, absolutely.
And cost us a lot of money, either in consultant bills or mistakes or losing a customer or anything.
Absolutely. And I think also going for cheaper rather than, I always say that if you think it's expensive to hire a professional, wait until you hire an amateur. So the times when I've been advised, oh, you should go with them because they're cheaper. Yeah. And it's ended up costing me twice as much.
They say, what is it? Buy cheap, buy twice.
Or
people that understand the cost of everything but the value of nothing.
Exactly. And when people say to me, oh, that's cheap. And I go, no. It's good value. Because cheap always has bad quality attached to it. Always.
And here's a final question. If you had to buy a book for a friend or family, what book would you gift?
Ooh. There's a book called by Dr. Julie Smith, and it is a Sunday Times bestseller, and it's called Why Has No One Told Me This Before?
Which I bought, actually.
I've
not read it, but
brilliant.
I bought it.
But for anyone...
I've not read it.
For anyone that is looking to look into possible therapies or trying to practice more self-awareness or step into their own growth, particularly in their own well-being, it is a fantastic guide to the ins and outs of all different types of therapies, what you can expect, what they feel like, and gives you a real baseline foundation in that first stepping stone forward. It's a fantastic book. Yeah. She's made it very, very simple in the best of ways. It made it so much easier for people to see therapy as something that's very accessible.
Yeah, brilliant. Amy, thanks very much.
You're welcome.
You are a true maverick. We've learned. I've learned an immense amount today, and it's almost. But you're a very different personality in how you approach things than what I would. But it's really good to learn how you perceive things, and I think that whole kind of shift about enjoying the now and how you've moved on from those challenges is really, really inspirational. So
thank you.
So well done.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the coffee as well.
There we go.
Delightful.